Okay.
So I think the title, they will not automatically recognize that as an alternative. And I think you can have multiple titles as well because of the grouping, so you need to...
Oh.
But does it validate because title element is not native to SVG, right? Wouldn't it be better to have an alt tag
Where would you put the alt tag?
in the SVG? Since SVG has a role of image, alt tag would be the alternative to the image.
Oh, see, I don't know how this is supported. I don't know.
Well, if I have a image, normal image, then I have alt for the image describing the image, right?
Right, but
Because you cannot.
the alt is part of the image element, but this wasn't an image element. You gave it the role image.
So it doesn't treat it like image element when it's role image.
No, because I think the browser is what treats that, and I don't know if it automatically, if it would then expect an alt attribute in that case.
If you're using the SVG as an image with a link to the SVG, I think you'll need the alt attribute because it couldn't process the title inside the SVG. But if the SVG is in line, I think the title would be
Only if the SVG is in line.
Yeah,
if it's referenced as an image, it's an image anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Or base 64 anyways, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Or if it's in line with something else, and I think you could have put it in, I don't know, a span or something, but
yeah.
it was
Yeah.
title which is semantically richer, even though I think in this case it doesn't actually.
So, how do you handle animated SVGs?
I don't know.
I guess it depends on the animation.
It depends on what the animation is.
Some are completely useless because it's just like a spinning globe or something. But if,
And even the animated SVG is kind of, the animation is built in, so you know in advance what's happening. So you could, in the worst case, even have some kind of timers that would update. So it's a live region that will be updated synchronously with the...
Right. Live regions, then you have a before and after kind of animation.
So in the worst case, you could do that, but the difference with VR is the VR is the interaction comes from the users. You have no way in advance. But I guess maybe with live regions you could work as well to provide updates on what's happening and what's being seen right now. But still, it's you as an author do not know previously what's what's going to be presented next. It has to be.
Yeah. So live regions would be basically the same that you would probably do with canvas elements anyways, and WebVR is rendering on canvas, right? So I read an article about Angular and live regions and stuff like that. That basically you can navigate forms that are in canvas objects.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be pretty much the same. Now, WebVR has just one single click when you touch the screen, right? But it would be making more sense if you had multiple different kinds of clicks. Like if you had two different zones where you can click on it, just to enhance the kind of input. So you only have, instead of just having one button over the entire screen in VR, there's headsets like the Merge headset that has two different kind of triggers, and there's dividing the screen left and right. So it splits in the middle and then has like a left click and a right click on the screen. So and that, yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of way to like bring more input clicks into a VR experience than just a single just tapping the screen. You know what I mean?
Yes. I'm just wondering. I think. I don't know. We should maybe plan what we want to achieve in the 45 minutes that we're going to have. So just maybe a round of names. I don't know everybody. So Diego. And I'm Shadi.
I'm Roland.
Roland.
Fred.
Fred. Okay. From
Belgium.
Belgium. Okay. No, I thought organization or I don't know you. I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
from the audiovisual part,
Okay.
bit curious.
I'm Louis, from Belgium.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? What do you want to accomplish in the next 45 minutes? We have the topic of accessibility. I was thinking maybe try to explore some of the challenges that are currently are, maybe some of the ideas. I think your demo might be. Have you actually presented that? Sorry, I wasn't here this morning. Have you
No, I just tested it with Jerry
with Jerry? Yeah.
in the room because I wanted to get his feedback.
Maybe you could tell us about that experience, so we could maybe build off of that.
Yeah, so it's out actually on GitHub. I'm sharing it on the slide too.
Right.
The slides will be shared also on it. But so what it is basically, it's like I'm reiterating. This is like a little town square
Right.
that you can navigate through from beacon to beacon. There's 4 beacons in this place: north, south, and west, and east of the piazza itself. And you have points of interest within that space that actually that have their specific sound bound to it. So it's 3-dimensional sound elements in that space. In the middle you have a little fountain, then in the corner you have a cafe with people sitting in the restaurant, and then a person feeding pigeons in another corner, and the market place where it's like a little town market, like a fruit vendor or something. And so the experience is that you navigate from these beacons to these beacons, and you hear like how you pass the fountain on the left, on the right, and you orient yourself by just looking down, and it has a compass which tells you which direction you're facing. So because so you can always look down and say, oh, you're facing north, and then you know, okay, now left of me was something, so you can turn left and say, oh, okay, that's where the fountain is. Then turn right and can go in the other direction. So it's more like getting a feeling of immersion of space, and while you're navigating from beacon to beacon, these different kind of triggers, they're like hotspots so you can navigate to. You actually go to that place in a comfortable walking pace, and you hear footsteps triggered in an interval that is a nice little stroll through that kind of experience, giving you the impression that you're actually walking in the space. So I tested it with Anthony. He's he's posting for Nobility. Yes. And I have a few other accessibility tests on that experience too. But before I create a component out of that, what I have, I want to get more feedback from actual testers and see if it makes sense to kind of give people the blind users the chance to actually manipulate the pace and the amount of steps. Or like, does it make sense? Does it feel like you're actually walking, or does it feel far too fast for you? Because, are there variables that are relevant for you to have a more deeper immersive experience? Does it, or is it gender specific? Do you need the sound of heels when you're a woman, or do you need that kind of degree of customization in order to just give a more richer experience? Does it make sense to ask what kind of shoes you're wearing when you enter a VR experience? That kind of thing, in general?
So what's interesting to me is you kind of have a reversed sonar radar.
Yeah.
So you're because I've seen several such research projects where you put on some glasses and some cameras, and it will convey information via audio, so that blind people can actually interact with the spaces. Have you looked at any of that? You're basically, it's the inverse of that.
No, actually, my approach was to see what accessibility does on the web and find a reasonable solution for WebVR. And what I found out is that VoiceOver and TalkBack and all these they're great tools, but they're just not made for the immersive content. It's just the bare bones is to just read out the alt text and read out the content, and it forces HTML developers to really make semantically sensible text and make web standard compliant and nicely structured use navigation, use the HTML5 elements in order to describe a very rich website experience in order to make it accessible. But the problem with that is like I want to build out some kind of standardization for WebVR. So does it mean that if I have a floor and I have a material that I give to the floor because I have like all these like elements that in A-frame, let's say A-frame has, I'm creating a plane and the plane has a grass texture on it, has reflection, certain kind of like shaders on it. Should that be information I should give back to me as like how does it sound if I touch it? How heavy do I touch it? Do I stand on it? Do I step on it? Do I touch it with my hand? Is that kind of feedback of the shader also relevant information that to give me, which will then enhance the immersive feeling, right?
It kind of seems that it could be something quite useful as it is an audio description, for example, in movies. I was having this chat before coming to this event with Leonie Watson, and I was asking her how would it make sense to tackle a discussion on accessibility on a WebVR environment. And well, she was pretty much saying that the methods that we have at the moment are not really enough for the task that is at hand, because if you have a medium like WebVR, or VR in general, where anything can be anything, and you don't know if something is clickable, which means that it's kind of like a button because you can interact, but it's not because it has a different shape, then what type of role are you going to give it? And even if you could define any type of role for any type of event in the VR world, it would be just impossible to maintain. So she was proposing that maybe one of the ways that this could go is in having, like these systems that I've seen, for example, the ones Microsoft Cognitive Services, Google has some similar that you kind of give it a picture and it describes a room. There are people sitting inside. So she was saying that he uses these kinds of apps and that this might be something that might be used, because one of the other problems with VR is that the interactivity and the way that you're actually guiding yourself through the experience is defined by you. So if we really can't predict where the user is going to be seeing or what the user is going to be doing, then it would make sense to have this system that is describing in a way what you are seeing. The problem there is the analysis that you require and the processing that you require, let's say on a frame to frame, which would be impossible to do for these type of scenarios. So we kind of discussed, okay, maybe we start thinking about something like defining additional elements, which let's say in A-frame could be, you can just make a component that would behave like a button, at least make it accessible by putting some area roles that would define it, but that in the long scope it wouldn't really be very useful. We need to define this new way that would allow us to, independently of what we are representing, to be able to find to tell the user where is he and what is he seeing. So I'm not sure if that brings some ideas or if there's...
Well, this morning we were talking about declarative VR, like creating some tags in the HTML. That could be something, because if you create a button, for example, and we say that's the look of the button and this is where it's in the 3D space, then like it could be accessible with the keyboard, because you could just tab, and then, for example, the camera will just focus on the button, and there could be like a active focus state on this button, and then you could click with the enter key, because all these elements would be not just a picture rendered on the Canva, but it could be like actual HTML elements that are not rendered through basic CSS in the 2D world, but in 3D, where you could like really interact with them.
I'm thinking there are at least two levels here. There's one, when I enter the room, there's this macro level of abstraction. Okay, here's a room full of people, it's fairly spacious, the very high level information that I take in, and then I might not even see the button at that stage. And then you start focusing on special areas, and then they start becoming actual real objects. So this table has a wooden surface, has metal legs. You start actually picking up more detail. and then you recognize that something is a button. It's also and then the VR system knows it's a button. So this is for me like custom widgets on HTML. Yeah, you can be as creative as you want in designing them or something, but at the end, since they're a button, they should also be marked up as a button. But that's really, I'm thinking more from the user, and one of the things that I'm just wondering, just going through my head is you know, visually sometimes, or just generally, sometimes you might not recognize a button, but it's a button because it's not well designed in real life. So why, we have to make sure sometimes that text descriptions of images actually go far. They describe more than what's in the image. So we call that kind of like over describing, when you start describing something more than it is, and give more information to the screen than actually. So this is, I think, also something interesting. So if a button is visually not very clear, it's hidden somewhere, or it has the same color as the wall or something.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a whole
That's a whole
visual
other,
disability problem with like contrasts and
Right.
So I mean there's tools now for 2D to make sure that the color contrast is correct for people with like color blindness and stuff like that. I mean there are. I only know for 3JS and the world there that there's filters you can add to post process to increase contrast and get it to a AAA rating kind of accessibility. But what your point is, like when you are in VR space, even at native experiences, not everything is interactable, and it's deceiving because people think, if I'm creating a kitchen, well then I need to be able to throw the coffee maker against the wall or something like that.
Right.
But it doesn't really happen. And for web, we have the chance to tab and select and focus on elements that are interactable. So like what I said in my presentation is like if I give elements that are interactable the chance to be focused, and whether that focus is changing the color or giving it a halo or just giving it attention or just an arrow that points at it. It doesn't have to be a physical button, it could be maybe a tennis ball on the wall on the side that you can actually pick up and throw. That kind of thing. If you give it a state of being focusable, then you can skip through it and then see the elements that are actually able to be interacted with, which enhances the experience, and also gets rid of the deception of like, I'm in a space now, I don't know what I can play with, but it gives me an idea of what I can play with.
So on this macro level that you're talking, we can have high level information about the scene that you're just entering, and then once you go closer, you can kind of like start going into what you're describing, but focus not, let's say, on appearance, but maybe on actions. Kind of like if we can have, and I don't know if I'm not really sure if Varia covers this, but for example, having something that would be like pick up or pull or push, something that would be more referring to an action because it's something that you're interacting with in a space.
Yeah. So just to jump on that, there's the skip blocks or skip links. We should have something like that for VR content where you can basically skip the description of the room you're in because you're already in it when you start navigating with tab.
Yeah.
Just like you can skip navigation in order to get to the content of like sections or articles. So skip blocks, the skip links or like block content. So you can jump from give me an overview where I am, and now go into like the interact with objects mode, and then inside of that one, then I can select an object, and then you can actually pick one of the things you want to do with that object, and therefore you can say either pick it up, drag and drop, or something like that. And like what I said with the lowest common denominator of interactive buttons, we can use those in combinations too, right? So like I know that the screen readers have all control or like command key and stuff, but obviously we don't have that on the gamepad API, but we can map it in a certain way. And I know that, Jerry said he has a Bluetooth keyboard, so he navigates his phone or his tablet with keyboard. Boom. Now you should be able to navigate VR space with keyboard.
Right.
As very basic tool. So if we can build upon that as like a baseline and kind of say, okay, here's a suggested pattern with how we map like the gamepad API with the keyboard API, get a baseline there, and instead of having the promoting like crazy remotes, like I mean the stuff that HTC Vive does, or you know, like it does make no sense, you know, like I'm just saying one of the experiences I always take as an example is like if I'm sitting in an airplane, I can't stretch my arm out, yeah, or I can't twist my head and otherwise you hit the neighbor in the neighbor seat. But it is a space that I want to escape from, because sitting in coach is a terrible experience. So I just want to put my headset on and then being on the beach for 7 hours until I'm in Belgium, or something like that. You know, so there's a use case for mobile VR that makes you just because of the circumstance limited in motion range. So we think about that as like as example for use case of accessibility, then we cater to like much bigger range of people than you know, just it's much more of a relevant and more it's much more practical.
But I feel like controlling the scene through keyboards, as long as we render the scene with a WebGL or libraries, we won't be able to do that because it will be always we will always have to like write all the scriptings to on key down, move the camera to the right. So that's why as long as we do the rendering of the scene and not the browsers, we will always have to do the work to control all those manipulations. So you could use like the gamepad API or keyboard or eye recognition or whatever, but it's always your job to on this event move the camera to the right, and on this event. So that's not exactly what accessibility is, because it should be like native in the browser. When you tap to scroll on the page, it's not you to say like on tap down, switch to the next active button. It's all native, and right now the browsers has no idea of what's happening on the headset, because you could do like everything you want. So the key down, the up key could just be I don't know, change the color of the background to the red. It has no meaning for the browsers what you're doing with the keyboards. So it's kind of hard to just say like, yeah, we could navigate through the keyboard, but how does the browser know what's the settings of the camera, where is the camera, where is the camera looking at, and stuff like this. So that's also a big issue, I feel.
What were the major challenges you observed with when people were using your system? When you tested this drive?
Yeah, so when I not only with my accessibility demo, but in general, people that had never used WebVR, especially like that I just put that headset in their hands, they stare at it, and then they don't know that actually the gyrometer is moving their eyes. So they just said, okay, what am I doing now? They don't know that moving the head means they can look around. And that is like, you would think that it's like the most logical thing, look around, you know, but it's just really, people get afraid of like that technology. It's like, oh, am I breaking something when I do something, so I stay like this, and what's happening now? So people are more used to get content animated and basically digested for them instead of being actively part of the process. So they used to be in a movie theater, and then it happens in front of them instead of being part of the movie itself.
Right.
So that bridge will happen at some point, the more exposure people have. And then on top of that, what I experience is that people get easily disenchanted. So, oh, that's it? Okay, then I'm not interested anymore. And then you put it down. Because, oh, it's just it? Like, okay, no, what else? And so it's just in order to bring in some, like because you have people start playing with the New York Times VR experience, and then they send out like 1 billion cardboard headsets in the beginning. and that was it. And then they put it in the closet or put it in the trash, and that's it. It's like, okay, I'm done with VR. But the problem is that because it is very much of a spoon-fed experience, all these videos when you climb up the World Trade Center one and stuff, it's very narrative where it's like, okay, but there's not really much they can do with it except just lean back and enjoy that. So as soon as if we create WebVR experiences where you can actively change something, just like the painted thing, where you can actually create something, then it will give back the interest of the user.
Would it be possible to classify the type of interactions that a user can have with a VR experience in a way that if we have them classified, then we can define a kind of like role or setting for the browser that can, let's say, tell the user, okay, you are in, if I define an experience that is pretty much just teleportation and defined points, which is a lot of experiences nowadays, and we can say, okay, the user would know that maybe if he looks to the side, then he could kind of click or touch or have, for example, these different areas on the screen that would mean different things that would teleport him there. He gets kind of like a small description, or he can skip the description. But maybe if there's a way that we can properly identify what are the uses or interactions, most common interactions that everyone has with a WebVR experience. I was recently looking at the Coco, the new movie, Pixar. They released a VR experience. Everyone was talking about it. So and it's an experience for the Rift. So it's supposed to be high end. It's very nice, the experience itself, but the base of the experience was very simple because it was just teleporting and clicking and teleporting and clicking. And I was surprised, being an Oculus Rift, that it seemed like it was working so well, and it was kind of like it was kind of hand in a very small set of type of interactions. So maybe for these type of experiences, it would make sense to classify, and then once the user knows that this is a type of experience of A, B, or C, then he knows how to interact with it, unless they actually deviate a lot from.
But wouldn't be that way of interacting, if you want teleportation or if you want motion animated, wouldn't that be up to the actual user? If I get sick by having forced motion and I want teleportation, then I should have teleportation. Yeah. And if I am blind, teleporting doesn't make any sense because it wouldn't give me the feeling of motion inside of the virtual space. So it would be actually taking away from the experience.
It would be. I remember this game. It was a console-based game where you pretty much had, let's say, a room, so you can go like you would get this scene described, and then you have a door here, you have this, and then you can kind of like press a key or to go to another room. But the set of actions was pretty much constrained in a way that it was manageable, and you were still being in this environment, which was working quite well. I think that there should definitely be the option, but if we see that most of the experiences, because I don't mean teleportation for the effect, for the visual effect of it, but let's say that points of interest would be here because I know that I have a visual object, let's say this computer that has a role push or interact, or so kind of like put different points of interest where it would make sense, and then you can, by teleport, you can just kind of go here, 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 and you can move in the scene probably in a way that can be abstracted with multiple experiences.
Do you remember the text-based RPGs? It sounds very much like what you are describing.
Yeah. Played them back in the day.
Yeah, so like you're in this room, you see this, exactly. And you can do this, and that. And then there were like certain commands that were like offered to you, and sometimes there were like secret commands that you could just type something and it worked. Like, wow.
Yeah.
It's like a gesture.
Yeah, like.
Speaking of gestures, we should find an alternative for gestures for mobile devices, because you can swipe, you can touch, like the WebVR experience should have its own kind of gestures, right?
That's what I was thinking when, I don't know, you look left and then you create some, triggers some command. To me that sounded a lot like a gesture.
Right. if you have the keyboard attached to it, then that's basically bypassing the whole gesture problem. Because you can't use your, I mean, ideally you don't have to touch the screen of the phone at all, because the screen is in front of your face. You shouldn't be able to default on there, so it should be,
So like a Bluetooth keyboard that you can just use to navigate.
Bluetooth, yeah. Jerry has a Bluetooth keyboard that he navigates with his devices. So if you have up, left, right, and then space, control, whatever, you can actually tap through stuff on his sides. Yeah. Yeah, or maybe a braille kind of reader, so you can actually read what the content is. Or have a text-to-speech that tells you what you're looking at. You know. Yeah. Like I said in my presentation, I had to rebuild basically the looking over objects. I had to have the API, text-to-speech API, instead of using ARIA, or instead of using the screen reader, because the screen reader was just changing the gestures from normal tap to double tap in order to click on objects. Terrible experience to double tap on
But
VR
then you have
headset.
to take into account that people who are using screen reader are already used to those gestures.
Yeah, I know, but when you have a double click doesn't really work on the VR. On a polyfill it doesn't really work nice. So I actually had Anthony turn off his voiceover, which they can do really fast, because they're used to using the devices. But it's not really the best solution. You want to be able to kind of merge that into it.
So would it make sense to try to define something that we could take as let's say, known gesture in a mobile environment that would allow us to activate this type of mode, or to kind of like move in this accessible kind of mode?
So two things that come to my mind. One is keyboard bindings, and this is something that way Aria kind of tries to look at, because the browser doesn't basically specify. Again, you could arrow up to change the color or something, if that's what your application does. But if for navigation it defines certain buttons for navigation purposes, or characters actually, that you would then map in your application. So that's maybe the keyboard interaction. With regard to gestures, for a while there was this in the UI, independent user interfaces, and that's when gestures were starting to appear on mobile. And the idea was here to provide alternatives for these gestures, so that, I don't know, double tap, you could just as well press Control Alt, whatever, to trigger the same thing in a different way. But that work, I think, flowed all into web platforms. So this was, I think, is now more native HTML that you get right away, which is good. So we didn't need to define this additional layer of accessibility, but it's actually built in directly into the events. But this is also, so this just comes to my mind as a comparability. There could be some default keyboard bindings, because I guess the navigation in 3D is very different than through a website. Actually, it's 4D because you have the time dimension as well to a certain degree. So it's so you need to look at maybe some keyboard bindings here, but maybe also some the gestures. But ideally, those would also be built in directly, because a gesture for somebody to, I don't know, activate a teleport hotspot or something should be kind of independent of if it's a blind person or deaf or whatever. It's just a function, and how you trigger it, whether by keyboard or by mouse or by controller or something, that's actually relevant.
Well, I think it's on Facebook or YouTube, the 360 videos. If you're on your phone, you can either move your phone or swipe on it. So it's kind of an alternative. But yeah, we could also think about using your keyboards to go to the right, to the left.
So one, like, who's the CTO of Oculus? What's his name? Yes, he was writing a tweet about stick shift being the death of.
Anybody know who is this camera?
Martins, I guess. I think it belongs to Martin Split. Martin.
Yeah, so he was writing that stick navigation is the death of VR or something like that. He said like if you don't use a joystick to navigate VR space, then don't do VR. And he said that basically like as like a point of making like let's just focus on head rotation because it would make people too sick to navigate with a joystick because forced camera motion is the best road to seasickness. I understand, and I understand because he uses a VR headset that's very much a canned environment. But if you have motion, then with remote or with cursor, the best approach it would be like to make it not smooth animation but steps. It's just basically like imitating a teleportation kind of, in order to prevent you from getting seasick.
But if you cannot move your head, why would you use a headset? You could just render the scene on the screen, like on your desktop. You wouldn't need the headset if you cannot use the advantage of a headset.
But if you're wheelchair bound and you don't have any kind of range of motion, the thing is you still have 160-degree field of vision, and if you like navigate, you want to navigate left or right, then you can still have like this.
Yeah, you can still
immersive
see it in
feeling
3D.
plus 3D audio.
Or if you sit on the train, you don't have to use the wheelchair.
Exactly. So you're basically in the airplane example. You know, you want to have a rich VR experience, but
you cannot look back.
You can't afford business class.
Yeah, that's another problem.
So we should be wrapping up.
There are resources and accessibility. When developers are starting to develop VR, they might not know anything about it, so are there online resources where they can come?
Like accessibility in general or in VR?
In VR.
I found none.
So maybe we should create
But there is, I think, Oculus has something about it. They have several speaks.
they have
video,
tools, and
yeah.
I know that people exactly know this from this, and they will present amazing work they are doing. So I guess more people are doing such kind of work. And we should have a common place where all people can contribute and get this information, otherwise everyone will have to invest time researching on the same thing.
Well, there is Able Gamers and all these kind of accessibility blogs where they show for games how they use accessibility features, and but build like something like that just for VR games or VR experiences would be interesting. Because there's accessible games out there.
Yeah,
a ton of
and
them.
games you can get a lot of and learn instead of rediscovering it after
Right,
several years of research.
But to me, a game also has some kind of a story or a playbook or something.
Right.
Even if it's, you have a high degree of freedom and interaction, but there's still it's still more bounded than VR in my view. So it's a bit, but there's certainly a lot you can learn from and how to make objects accessible and how to, that part. But interesting is really this transposition of a real world into a virtual world. And should it be more accessible than the real world? Is another maybe just ideologic question. I mean,
Well, you see, the thing is when in OC4, like Josh from Dagger System was saying that VR is good because it is an escape from he's wheelchair bound, so he has this he has this the thing where it says it's free. So now in VR he can do whatever he sees, whatever everyone else sees, and he's really like it's a free experience from the everyday kind of things he has to deal with, and that's the good part about it. So it's
Even
definitely
for people who can walk, like there was this
yeah.
YouTube video.
The session. Just a couple of minutes. You guys come and
so wrapping up. Sorry.
So yeah, so there was that YouTube video where they put a balloon and they let it go up, and you are just sitting in this balloon and you are like seeing Earth springing down. And this is something I can do. I can attach myself to a balloon and just
Yeah,
go
right,
up in
right.
the sky. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Any final comments to wrap up?
It's a hard subject. It's not that easy.
No, it's never easy, but that's the good part about it.
Yeah,
It
sure.
would be too easy, you know.
if it's easy, it's not fun.
Right?
Not fun anymore.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you too.
Oui, je sais. On m'avait déjà proposé, on m'avait déjà dit que c'était super intéressant pour moi. Mais c'est à quelle heure que ça commence? 6h ou 7h. À la limite, c'est comme tu veux. Ça permet d'avoir un live stream de ce mec aussi. En vérité. Hola, hola, hola. Everybody?
The bad news is that Everybody? Hello? Yeah?
There is no formal
Okay. Hola. Hola. No worries. Is it ready? Good. Okay, so now for our final session, we're going to have another breakout session. This is the last session of the day before well-earned drinks. We are going to break out in first business development. So if you're interested in business development, you will follow Thomas here, who will lead the conversation. And the other one is this idea of gathering this list, which I don't want to spoil the surprise. I'm going to invite on stage my fellow, yes, of course, yes, Dan Applequist, to explain what are we going to do and why. So stay tuned. This is very cool.
Right. So we got in one of the previous breakouts, we got into a bit of a discussion. First of all, I'm Dan from Samsung. We got into a discussion in the previous breakout about how to create really good environments for teaching WebVR or for showing WebVR, either to kids or to even in a hackathon, or how do you engage people and get them started? So Diego presented a workshop at MozFest a couple weeks ago around WebVR with Thomas, where they were using Glitch, for instance, as a way to build WebVR to show how you could do that really quickly, but there are some deficits to the existing environments like Glitch that are out there, so we came up with an idea of coming up with a list of things, kind of like a wish list, what we would like to see for environments like that would help us to be able to engage developers and teach them or run workshops demonstrating the power of WebVR. So that's kind of what we're going to try and do, put together like a laundry list and discuss what would make the best kind of environment like that. Does that make sense?
Okay, so, yes, but before that, we're going to do a digest, right, from the sessions. So I'm going, yeah, Marco and Shadi are going to do a digest from the previous breakout sessions that we have.
So we had a nice conversation about the sound, and as we can conclude a little bit that it's not really actively developed, and it's for everybody fairly unclear what resources they can use and what is available for them, and what are the bottlenecks actually to create proper sound experience, which are really rich sound experiences. So we are not talking about just playing one stereo track back, but making very complex audio scenes, and what are your limits then, and where those limits coming from and how to overcome them. Also were raised questions about MIDI devices, or like sound, different instruments to connect them direct into VR, I guess, which is actually a subject I haven't also heard a lot of being covered in community, and it's definitely something I guess should be looked into. I guess this can conclude just that group we were talking about, just collect their ideas about a little bit as a content creator side as well, like what would their expectation to be. and maybe summarize that together then maybe end of the third day, and collect those ideas together and see where we can bring that subject further to kind of give some kind of momentum into that, get that audio better eventually. So about the session, I think so. No, there is not right now no much to add. So.
So I'm going to do a terrible job because I already forgot half of the things. But we started off, and I'm going to ask others to chime in. I think we started off with talking about levels of abstraction, describing objects in level of abstraction. If I come into this room, you know, what do I pick up? Or if I start focusing on something and recognizing buttons. And then from that, we started talking about interaction. So things like WebVR or something could help describe objects, but what's maybe missing are things to actually describe interactions. So not only give it that it's a button, but actually really describe interaction. I can open a door. I can teleport. I can jump. I can whatever these kind of things. Then immediately from that we delved into games, particularly old games. Somebody brought that up, that example that, you know, where the games would actually tell you, okay, you're now in the room and you have such and such objects and you can do these and these commands. There may be some hidden commands as well. Hidden commands was then our link to step further into gestures, and how to look at that. So keyboard aspects, keyboard navigation, keyboard commands, but also gestures like, I don't know, you look left and that will trigger something. Gestures. We talked a little bit about having things not be, so whether you want external aspects like a joystick or a keyboard or something to control the view, and how that's actually not good because of motion sickness and things like this. But then gestures would need to be completely different concept, triggered through other forms of motion. How would those alternative then look like? So we talked about somebody who maybe cannot even move their head. How would then the alternatives here be? And then at the very end, there was, I think, a very, very important question raised is there actually guidance on how to make VR accessible? And everybody started looking around. So I think that's maybe an important identification here is I don't think anybody in our small circle knew of really, really good resources to help developers who want to make something accessible. We did then talk about games. There's a lot of gaming accessibility and blogs and things like that where we can maybe learn from that. But there needs to be more guidance really on VR and how to make that accessible. That's what I recall. If anybody has anything to add, speak up now or forever hold your peace. Thanks.
So we
CSS, and you can see that how, you know, the difference that it makes. So that's very compelling, and it is an easy way to get people engaged right away and show them, here's the code, here's what it looks like, and here's what you've just done, and now you've just added this, and you've just added this new feature, and you've just added that feature, etc. So how can we make, what are our wish list of, sorry, just to connect that for a second, there are, people have been saying that Glitch and other services like that are not very well, that there are deficits when it comes to their features, when it comes to WebVR in particular. And one key thing was amount of assets that they can hold, because very often WebVR scenes require very big files, big asset files. So that was one area. But the question is, what are other things that, like, what would be our wish list if we were to communicate with the people that are building Glitch about what, or other types of services, because this is not Glitch specific, but like what are our wish list of things for a hacking environment for WebVR, and that's kind of where we got to. So it felt like something that could really be useful to just put something down on a list that we could then use as a basis for communication with services like that. Good. Kathy, did you have anything to add?
Go ahead, if you want to jump right in, go for it.
Oh, I was just on the topic of the assets one. It's on the.
Do we have a mic somewhere?
Oh, sorry, I'm loud.
I know, but we've got a live stream going on, so. I know you're loud.
So on the,
I sit next to you.
so on the of like there not being a proven CDN, something which would be incredibly useful, but is a pain in the ass to implement, is a video streaming server which can like automatically up and downgrade the quality of videos, where you can just drag in a video file and get the URL for it. I've tried setting this up before, going through like, and you basically have to contact the CDN and get them to set something up for you. And there's no just off-the-shelf service you can.
Are you referring to adaptive streaming?
Yeah.
Because you can just set it up. If you know you have these example files, test files for -js, you can just do that in A-Frame. So maybe you can add support for that. That should solve the problem.
You need to transcode. Like if you're the user with one video file, he or she needs to be able to.
Yeah. So you can upload one video and then it.
You can do that for you.
Yeah. That would be an ideal.
Being able to take one asset and have it transcode into the appropriate different files and like drag and drop, as you say. Like you can, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And on a similar note for audio, if there was a service where you could live stream audio in, and then stream out to multiple clients, enabling, which would be a very like nice reusable way to enable like multi-channel like social VR experiences, which is something which I did take a while to look into, and I couldn't actually find a CDN which could do that.
Right, and the specific case that you're talking about, which I think is relevant here definitely, is where you've got a bunch of people that are all kind of dialing in to a VR experience, and you're sitting there as the presenter, and you want to actually, so Ada's done this at a couple of conferences where you've got like maybe 100 to 200 people that are actually like coming in and participating with an avatar inside the A-frame scene, and the speaker is at the center. But it would be great to take that and actually make it an environment where you could give a talk, you could have a learning environment inside of VR, and have real-time audio being sent out to those 200 people at the same time.
Sounds like a bird's eye view or something.
It's like a real. It's like a three. It's
Like
like a
one-to-many audio
POV,
streaming.
right? And you can see other people's avatars around you and moving around you at the same time.
It's unclear to me what the goal of that would be, what I try to achieve.
So you being able to have the presenter present and the other people hear the presenter's voice.
Yes, this is too much. Yes, this is a conference, but
A central, no,
So to allow anyone to
a learning environment, a virtual learning environment, right? So say you have a presenter, say you have a classroom type environment. I mean, this goes to the kind of edutech that we were talking about.
Yeah, so having the back end that support network A-frame and like WebRTC.
WebRTC is not well suited to that, right? Exactly. So yeah. But you can do that kind of one-way, single, multiplex one-way streaming pretty easily if you have the right environment for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for networked A-frame or experiences like that, if I'm developing those, I need to also see a view, a bird's eye view, some kind of where I can see me as presenter from another perspective in order to understand the dimensions in a space, right? I need to have a bird's eye view camera to edit that kind of event, right? Otherwise, I mean, that would be something I would like to see in a glitch or something, where you can take another view at things.
So that's like an A-frame component?
Similar, yeah. That on an inspector, and if I use the console, I'd like to see some benchmark testing too. I want to see how does that WebVR experiences look on different kind of networks. Like if I have like very bad connection, or like or how does it look on a device with less resolution than the one that I'm using? Yeah, because I want to kind of test like how does it really display on different things without having a device lab with 20 devices, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is something that I think I was thinking about when we were talking about the situation with the polyfill, the WebVR polyfill as well. An environment that was kind of WebVR polyfill aware almost, and knew about or could allow you to kind of see what this is going to look like on the different types of devices that WebVR polyfill supports, right? And actually, that could help you to decide what kind of service you want to provide or what kind of things you want to do if you know all the people that you're presenting to or that you're talking to have a certain kind of device only or a certain kind of network only.
Some performance measurements so that you can get feedback on if certain parts of the code are running slowly. Yeah.
Yeah, like the stats component for A-frame, but that maybe in VR itself. That kind of like feedback that you can actually see.
It exists.
Is that existing already? That you can see it in the VR headset?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay. Along similar lines, you might want to include the developer console as well.
Yeah.
So there is also a console component for it.
Cool.
Other VR specific things.
Yeah, maybe tools which allow you to develop from inside VR, because that seems to be the central topic.
That would be kind of cool actually. Like if there was something in like an A-frame component you could run from Glitch, which would hook back into the editor and edit your file, and then have.
Like Steam toggle. So
Yeah, persistent to the code.
Yeah.
So for in-video editing, made a little prototype and happy to play with it this week. Doesn't look much, half broken, whatever, but exists, so happy to play with it. And for basically, same did a POC for saving the result of the inspector. Once you use the inspector to move your objects around, then you can save it back to the server. I didn't do it for
glitch, but any kind of server, you just like save the content there, because indeed that's a feedback loop that's missing. Like if you teach or explore with the newcomers, what I personally do is I don't tell them about the inspector until they get the key concept, and like 1 hour after, when they hate me already, then I told them like, why didn't you tell us? Well, you need to get the basics. But after then they play with it, they don't let go of the inspector. Like great, I can move my stuff around, and then they don't know what to do with the result. And then if they need to save it, they need to have their own server, whatnot, cores, blah blah blah. They're completely lost. So being able to save back the result of the inspector overall, I think would be pretty useful.
Yes, another feature I would like to see in like a glitch or in CodePen is that a history where I can actually go back in what kind of edits I did before, and if I reload or my screen crashes, that I'm going back to where I was before, because like every time, like WebVR, the polyfill is quite unstable, so sometimes I'm crashing it and then I get the whole thing reloaded. But I maybe want to have the latest state that it was selected before to go back to.
So GSB does it.
Definitely spectator mode. It's really, which will be not only A-frame based, but proper spectator mode to observe aside like what's happening in the scene. Yeah, because that's not only handy for development, but it's also for training purposes. Like you can actually show how it's done, you can observe texture, and then just try to mimic that in VR. So now,
from a VR perspective, say you have a group of people that are sitting in front of you, and every one of them has a device, a WebVR capable device. Being able to send a URL to them, I guess glitch already does that, and services like this already do that. Is there anything special that we would need to do in order to make sure that works with WebVR?
So, well, something which would be nice to build in, if you so there's the WebVR recorder. So if you were to do a set of motions and be like, here's me picking up this virtual cup of coffee and pretending to drink it, and then you stop the recording, and then you somehow associate that recording with your project, so that when you send the link to someone, it plays back the recording you made with your hardware, even if they don't have a HTC Vive or anything like that, so they can see what's happening and can run tests and iterate on your project without actually having to have the additional hardware.
Are you thinking along the lines of recording?
No, recording the actual position in the WebVR input, so the position and rotation of the controllers and that.
So you have the A-frame recorder replayer component that basically, you have the coordinates of what you does, and then regardless of the hardware at the end, you can replay it. So it can be use that, and there is an option in it to directly upload the recording to an endpoint. So if this tool were to provide an endpoint to receive it, you could replay instantly. One thing that's not a feature, but that's GSB in glitch CodePen is they try to do live reloading, and then there is memory leak always. I don't know about you guys, but whatever computer I use, whatever configuration I use, if I use live reloading and I have like, I don't know, 50 or 100 version of that, it will crash just because there is not memory anymore. So no memory leak. It's not really a feature, but from what I've tried,
I don't know if this is really the bug reporting session.
You can turn off live reloading glitch though if you want.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I use those services is because you have the code, the result, so for the student you have the visual result instantly is, that's the only reason basically I work.
But thinking about controllers, I was thinking about how you could provide a visual, I'm using this controller, oh, show me which button I'm pressing, make sure that, so kind of like a visual version of whatever controller you're using, so that you can basically like gamepad API aware editor or visual display of some kind. With
Like proxy controls?
kind of, yeah. But like sometimes you end up with weird button mappings on controllers, and something that shows you which thing the gamepad API thinks you're pressing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We have some web pages which allow you to test this. I've only seen one for the Xbox controller. Shouldn't be too hard to create a view for different controllers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can repeat what I just said. So there are these testing web pages which allow you to view the output of the gamepad API, and on that page I visited, it was mapped onto the Xbox controller, that you could create similar pages for a different controller.
Anything that helps to test on your specific hardware that you don't have is like so helpful.
Yeah, that's another advantage, that you can test what it would look like for controllers you don't have. Yeah.
I have the worst handwriting in the world, so I'm not sure why I'm doing this. So gamepad hardware, but also other types of hardware, like different headset. Well, I guess we already talked about that.
Maybe the left and right audio channels. Maybe audio output, input, output.
I imagine performance throttling would be worthwhile too, because the two sort of big brackets in VR right now are systems like the Vive, and then mobile systems like Daydream, Samsung, and now Oculus Go. And there's a pretty significant performance difference between those two brackets.
How about from an accessibility standpoint, features that we think, thinking about it from the screen reader.
Yeah, one tool would be to look into color contrasts, something like that, to get enough contrast on the VR experience. So we have people with color blindness, so any kind of problems that they can say this is not standard, that's not conforming to AAA or AA standards for the,
I think we should be able to simulate these kind of environments. You can add an A-frame
exactly.
visual simulators.
Yeah, the 3GS has post-processing shaders, post-processing, and then you can actually overlay. But that's basically similar what those online tools do for accessibility. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
One of the thoughts I was thinking about accessibility would be if in the scenario we were talking about there, where there's a teacher and 10 students and they're interacting, maybe one of those is deaf, for instance, and you may have the audio stream interrupted, and we say something like voice recognition as a service in the cloud, which changes it to text and presents it to that deaf listener. Is that possible to have those sort of services somewhere along the streets pulled in and used?
There is speech to text in the browser itself. So I think that's something that could be built to work client side. I'm hoping that the accuracy of those of the functionality in the browser gets better with the recent step forwards in audio processing.
I'm just thinking if the one I'm thinking of is voice recognition. But new Japanese voice recognition now can recognize 6 voices at the same time and translate them, which is pretty impressive. So that you're not likely to have that sort of software built into your own software, but it would be available through the cloud as a service.
That would be
Is there a way of sort of interrupting the stream and doing that?
Again, something that's not technically difficult, but I think if we take the perspective of workshops and sharing the content to students, is keeping track of how many students reach what point. Because if you want to scale to 5, 10, 20, how many students, like, okay, I know they hit like 1 hour to reach that point, so I need to either step down, give more information, or the opposite, like they're going extremely fast, so being able to keep track on some form of teacher-based analytics for seeing the rate, the pace.
Right, for teaching especially, it would be interesting to see if you can actually switch to the progress of each student's screen. Because if you teach and you have like the teacher's screen and then you have let's say five students, and they have a different rate of or have bugs, and you can basically pull up a student's screen to bug fix their screen. So you can basically toggle through tabs to see like where their problems is, and instead of that you have to go to their place, or you can teach remotely like that very nicely.
Okay, related with the teachers and students, I think Google Expeditions application has a lot of things to learn about usability, because the teacher has a tablet and it can view where every pupil is looking at, and something to help to know to the host of the teacher to know where if all of the students or all of the attenders are looking at the correct place or not. I think it could be a great
implement. From a VR perspective, you could imagine the teacher could see.
But I see more the teacher using another device, not in the VR. Okay. Or related with this, I think it's important to have tools to improve progressive enhancement more easily because if we made a pure WebVR experience, have some of the students, or in some cases, not all the users can use it. And if we have these kind of tools to make different enhancements with more presence or less presence depending on the device that the user has, I think it's important to take it out.
I think to bounce on this and to Gordon's point before for performance and performance throttling, it's anything that's kind of validation, like the same way you do CSS validation, that yes, it is progressively enhancing, yes, it works on this or that device, yes, if you throttle the network, it's still good enough, so that at the end of my work or at the end of so that the student can do it, not just wait for the teacher, professor to go through those basic steps that every viewer experience should have, that would be super useful.
Diego, what were some of the things that you ran into in the workshop that you ran with Thomas at MozFest, and have we captured them here?
Let me think. Problems that we had.
Cast your mind back. I know it was a long time ago. Something like 3 weeks.
I think it was related to connectivity. The other one was hardware. That the hardware was simply not easy to set up.
But I mean issues with glitch.
Issues with glitch. I remember the 128 megabyte.
Right. The large audio video assets and models.
That was
right.
quite painful.
Is there anything that you wished had been there, a VR-specific button or functionality or something like that, that you were like, why isn't this here? If only there was this function. Think about it.
Let me think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, one definitive thing that I need or I would like to have is a syntax highlighter for A-frame that kind of displays lights and displays audio and displays different components in different ways. And maybe even that, like if a light hits an element or kind of the relationship between the elements. So that kind of relationship, maybe that's a way how to highlight it in code, or like make things dependent on each other. Or if something has a physical attribute and others don't, that I highlight them differently. So
that sounds really kind of key, especially if we're talking about A-frame here.
Yeah. If you could hover over a material component and it would like render it onto a sphere.
Yeah, let's say I have a spotlight and it's hitting 3 different primitives, then those will be affected by the spotlight, and it would be interesting to see like if I redirect it so it only hits 1, and then it just renders much faster because it doesn't reflect or something. Yeah.
Kathy, any things from your thoughts?
Yeah, so I do some training with folks who are really new to this, coming maybe as front-end developers and stepping into VR for the first time. And even little things like we were at one hackathon and they were trying to set up a space, and they set up an Azure website and ran into all sorts of CORS problems that they couldn't figure out where they were coming from. So that took up a lot of time it was very discouraging. So things that smooth that kind of stuff out as much as possible. And I think a lot of the things have already been brought up. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. But when you're viewing, so this was an issue with CodePen, for instance. It keeps too many other aspects of the 2D browser interface in the scene when you try to go into Cardboard, and it doesn't reset going into VR mode and coming out of VR mode. So ease of mode transition, so there aren't things left over and artifacts.
Sorry, it was just a follow on from that point. Perhaps a getting started walkthrough would help, and a dashboard or something like that for ease of understanding, to translate the ideas of the web and the dashboard into a VR in context. Would that help the kinds of users who you're talking about here? So.
Maybe a bunch of useful demo scenes to fork.
There are I don't know how many hundreds of glitch that are remixable already.
For sure, yeah. I think sourcing some of those, so it's less about forking a bespoke project and more about like doing away with boilerplate could be interesting. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's that curating it is very valuable when you're just getting started.
Let's follow up this one. We ran pretty fast into the problem with awesome A-frame, right? Because this scene is getting too old and not maintained, so which eventually leads people in the wrong direction already. But just coming to a new platform and picking the scene, it's actually a totally obsolete technique already. So that's should we definitely try to avoid in that glitch like environment or that kind of environment, providing any type of kind of boilerplate. It should be ensured that it is well maintained and up to date of the current standard.
Maybe we can partially solve that kind of problem by defining templates, and then we can generate the code. So if it changes, we can update the boilerplate.
How can you easily? Are these types of environments any good for debugging or for showing how web audio works? Considering how complex web audio is as an API, can you visualize the filter chain metaphor, stuff like that? Is that worthwhile? I guess not.
Just brought something to mind. A-Frame Inspector has something like this, but just being able to search and sort of one-click install a component or supporting library is huge if you're just getting started with this stuff. The JavaScript tooling story is a nightmare right now, so sort of shoving that under the hood is a huge win.
I would like jQuery libraries or something that you have a set of components.
So A-Frame actually has a...
You have the registry.
Sorry?
You have the
registry.
The registry, right?
Yeah.
The A-Frame Inspector will let you do this partially, but unless you're running like a local server, it can't like save stuff locally very easily. So there's the workflow's a little bit jank. I feel like it can be smoothed out.
So what do you? So like CodePen, you can say I want JavaScript 11, jQuery 11 or something clicked on, and that's basically reflecting the registry, the npm registry for A-Frame, and you can say, yeah, I want to use superhands, click. Yeah, I want to use this instead of you have to always like define that. Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
Search and one-click install.
Bonus there is if you had it all within this editor, you could also do some bundling if you wanted to sort of take care of that for the user to deliver assets.
We were done. We're done with like bulleted list items. But are there other topics around this that, I mean, you know, that we could usefully discuss around, you know, how to engage new developers, how to engage not just new developers but people like you might go to a if you're trying to show how to build stuff using WebVR or using A-Frame to developers who are already familiar with web development, for instance, but like, are there other, not features, but other things that we should be taking into account? How do we make this whole topic more accessible to more developers? I think is the kind of overarching topic. Stepping back a moment.
Encourage them?
Yeah. No, discourage. Discourage. We don't want people using it.
What happened, right?
Yeah. So how do we encourage, exactly? How do we stop it from being discouraged?
I think we need to encourage the people to create 3D content, 3D spatial content, but not only for WebVR. It's the progressing. If you start with a 3D website that is used for touch screen on a computer, you can have a lot of audience to use it, and if this website or experience or anything it has some things more useful if you are using a headset, is good. But I think we need to start to aim to the people. For example, A-Frame now is very good to create a 3D experience, not only for the VR, because it's like a framework like 3DS. You can use 3DS, but if you start using A-Frame but thinking to use it as a 3D authoring tool more than a VR authoring tool, if you start to creating things for 3D, and if you add something special, if you have a VR headset, I think we can start to have more audience for our content, and this content could be useful if you are. So maybe some of the content is only specifically useful on VR, but I think a lot of percent of the 3D content could be useful when we have 3D based content. And I think it's good to start thinking on a website based on a 3D canvas.
So I know a lot of things. I mean, I guess there are already some showcases of great A-Frame content, or I know of ones of VR content, but not so much A-Frame content. But I'm sure that there are.
All the front-end developers who
I know are right now kind of pending state. So they enter the VR now. Even already have it called how it's needed. First thing always pops up, like can they monetize their time dedication? Like they are afraid of that it's so niche market that they are able to monetize their work. So that little bit related to probably other rooms discussion as well, that to give this comfort that this field has future, and they actually can potentially market their project what they're doing. Perhaps having kind of a centralized some sort of marketplace maybe to sell off your ideas, components, or like having more mature infrastructure out to kind of put your work out there. Like for designers, there are like
Yeah, on that topic, I'm working on a VR version of a list apart, where you have a whole bunch of web developers that are on the web since forever, and I'm working on like creating some kind of showcase of progressively enhanced WebVR experiences. That's why I asked Arturo to get me the link for his Birth of a Tornado, because I wanted to feature web experiences like this to a very 2D web world, to show them, hey, you build websites for established companies, you go to an event part, talks and learn about progressively enhanced websites, but now let's bring in the VR experience. And so I'm right now working on that kind of content, and I hope that I get a little bit of feedback and a little bit maybe help from you guys to bring some.
I think you've got a lot of potential collaborators in this.
Yeah, I need because it's right now I'm in the planning mode, and I want to get this under VR.elistapart.com out, so we can really kickstart some content creators into this that are coming from the web background. So
I think one more, and then Diego's saying that we need to close off.
Okay. We do two more.
Oh, sure.
Waiting. I wanted to say, from the 2D web developer perspective, so the entry behaviors, from an instructional design perspective, the entry behaviors of a 2D web developer is going to be different from someone who's already been working in 3D for a while. So coming into that, there are a lot of assumptions or best practices around 3D design that many developers who may be trying WebVR for the first time don't know. So having a place for them to come in and say, okay, well, these are the assumptions. Oh, this is a meter. We're setting this camera at this height. This is how you start out. Giving people just a bit of information around what's the foundation, what's the footing that you're on as you get started, I think would be helpful to some of the people who are coming in. Not everyone, but to some. So maybe some getting started guides around those kinds of assumptions would be helpful.
To add more on this, I have worked with 3D, with Unity for maybe about a year, and what they've done is very good work on getting people on board on something new, something they didn't have experience on. They didn't know C#, they didn't know Unity script, they didn't know 3D, but they've got awesome lessons for beginners which start from nothing, and you end up with a finished game which looks polished, doesn't look like something cheap. So they get the feeling of something complete of achievement. And also Unity has created a unique marketplace in which freelancers could say, hey, I do this and that, this is my portfolio, I want to work. Right. And other people can offer jobs. They can say, okay, this is my project, I need an artist, I need a programmer, I need this, I need that, let's work together.
We need that for WebVR.
We need that for WebVR.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need quality lessons, and we need a central hub in which people could collaborate. Because people need to earn money, they need to earn fame.
And pay each other in Bitcoin.
In whatever they want.
I think it's fab. It has the last WebVR used a platform that has something similar.
Sketchfab is only for 3D artists.
Yes, but they made a short film, a WebVR short film, and I think they used a platform that you can enter on this platform as an artist or as a programmer, and you can start. Maybe platform focused on WebVR is okay, but I think there is another platform that are using this kind of.
Yeah, maybe we could get in talks with some existing platform to expand their scope. This could help. I don't know.
I mean, the thing is with platforms like the one you described is that they're very much tied into. Unity is spending money on that because it helps them bring developers and retain developers on their platform. Nothing against Unity, but those types of things, the web traditionally has a problem organizing that kind of stuff because it's a bunch of different companies and organizations that are not companies that are kind of collaborating and competing at the same time, and traditionally have suffered from not being able to organize that well when it comes to commercial stuff like that. A counterexample, just to say one thing, is that Mozilla have recently put in place MDN Web Docs, which a number of organizations, including Samsung, also Mozilla and Google, have come in and said, okay, we are going to help make this the single place for web documentation now. So there's a kind of step. We're trying to change that.
But this is another thing. Mozilla has the best resources for over a decade, and they are the most used resources. So it was Microsoft tried, others tried, they couldn't beat them, so they decided to join.
Yeah, no, it's true. It was pushing on an open door to a certain extent. But anyway, I think we do have to end. But one more point, yes?
I just mean that is basically like the thing for Glitch or to CodePen to create some kind of VR portfolio to kind of inside of that tool showcase your own goods, right? Isn't that something that they could implement?
Yeah.
Just like Dribble or that kind of upload your VR portfolio, or like JS Fiddle or something.
Thinking about the boilerplates or something like that, I think the Kronos group is making a very good job with the GLTF and with the OpenXR. Maybe we need to look how they are doing the things, because they are a bunch of different companies implementing the same thing. Maybe, I don't know how exactly they are doing, but we look how
sorry,
we made 24 items.
Yeah, I'll say on the topic of being able to show you what you've made, equirectangular screenshot service.
That's already how I read it.
No, as a service. So you basically like, I want a screenshot from this website. It gives you a snapshot which you can then drop into. So you have,
That's too late, I can't put it on. We already have 24.
Shame, I'll just have to build it myself then.
All right.
The only thing left is to build it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
24 items until Christmas.
All right. Thank you. Well, it's like 24 pull requests. We can make 24 pull requests. There you go. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So now we're going to do. We're going to move back to the center. Small digest of that session. This session, which I guess Dan is. That's the and then we can try to all meet in a place for almost there. This is their picture.
Right.
Okay, because I don't know if I have 3G outside. Okay.
Hola.
Yes. Yes. I just didn't.
Hello. So we're just going to do the final digest session of the 2 breakout sessions that we've had. And after this, then we could meet up in another place. So Thomas and Daniel, digest of the session that we've had. Key points, digest of the session, quick digest of the session, and we're ready to go.
So yeah, the session on business use cases, it was kind of rather short, and we didn't talk about everything, I think, and we could have gone further. We didn't find, in a way, I'm a bit frustrated because we didn't find any solution, but we could have expected these kind of things. But we found, like, we pinpoint a few problems of business use cases today. One of those is like WebVR is not ready yet to push like compelling models in terms of performances and to have something which is to the level of being sold correctly. It's also a problem of hardware in the way where mobile phones might, please, if I misunderstood something, please correct me and raise your hand, and please do not hesitate. But yeah, so also the point which was raised is like mobile phones are not the best thing to see 360, and people are not using VR as much. Like we talked about, Visor having statistics about people following a link about the WebVR experiences, only like less than 5% of them. Yes? Yeah, 5% of them, less than 5% of them push the VR button. So most of them just use the mobile magic window or viewed it on desktop with a mouse. So VR is not like attracting people to use like a proper headset. So either they don't have one, or either they don't just see the use of pulling out their headset, putting the phone in it. So maybe in the future when we have different kind of headsets it will be easier, but today it's kind of a problem we are facing. We were talking a lot also about so marketing is a problem we are facing in the way where people and as well end users as businesses need to be taken by the hand. We need to showcase, so for the businesses, we need to build proper use cases for them to see the interest of WebVR. And for the users, we need to showcase WebVR directly into headsets and like to go to trade shows, these kind of things, to showcase WebVR. Otherwise, they won't be willing to spend 200 euros or 400 euros into a headset they've never tried or tried just once at a friend's house or something like this. So yeah, so there's a part about education, there's a part about performances, and to find the proper use cases showcasing, like, will there be, so there was a question about, will there be like a killer use case? Maybe not, because VR has been around for a little while. So maybe we just like need to continue on showcasing things and to advertise and advocate VR until we're at the point where people understand and the hardware is there as well, and everything concur into WebVR working and VR in general as well. So I think it's pretty wraps it up, I think.
The 24 points that we came up with now, I don't know, I'm not going to go through them exhaustively, but basically we had a discussion about how to, what feature requests we might put on existing hackable authoring environments like Glitch that might help people who are trying to use those environments to teach people WebVR, to teach A-Frame, what might help them to be able to create a better experience for not just teachers, but people in a workshop or hackathon environment or any of those kinds of environments where you've got an instructor or a workshop leader. So things like being able to have larger assets, for instance. I think that's probably one of the key things, and was something that we knew before the discussion anyway. But like being able, because WebVR often requires very large assets, being able to have those assets uploaded and be part of the application very easily. You know, obviously this is just a wish list, right? So, you know, but what would we want? Video streaming, so being able to have automatically drag and drop kind of video transcoding, so taking a video asset and being able to transcode it into various forms that you actually need for the different types of device that you want to be sending it to, so low-fi, mid-fi, hi-fi, that kind of thing. Being able to have specific tools that help you with web audio environment, with gamepad API environment, performance measurement and throttling, being able to see what the application is going to look like in various scenarios, when you have a low network, when you have a low bandwidth network, when you have different kinds of different types of devices, different types of headsets, etc. So I think, you know, we came up with a bunch of stuff. I already tweeted it out to Anil Dash and Jen Schiffer from Fog Creek, so hopefully they'll before the end of this workshop, they'll have implemented everything on this list, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. Okay, any questions? No?
Okay, so that's a wrap for day one. Now, first of all, thanks to both Nikos and a big applause for all the help that you've given us today. Big thanks to the host as well. And now we're going to try to meet at 7:30 in a place for drinks. My French is very bad, but Place Saint-Jarry. Jarry, yeah. Yeah, you probably. Basically, it's a place that's called. Yes, it's Salva is tweeting it at the moment. The place. The thing is, we're too many, so it's a place where 4 bars have corners that are very, very close, and there's a small plaza in the middle, so we can meet there around 7:30 for a drink. You're very much welcome to join us and keep on discussing on WebVR. Okay, thank you very much.